Neil, good morning.
Hi.
I'm delighted.
Yeah.
You joined
Hi. I've been here a while. I just couldn't unmute myself for something.
No problem, no problem. Neil, I've done an introduction, just in relation to Sandyford and Brexit. You're going to speak to us today about the latest Brexit developments. Update us on your knowledge and wisdom and insights. But first of all, before you do that, how have you been coping? I know this is probably a very crazy time for you with the Brexit deadline on 31st of December, but how have you been dealing with the challenges over the last number of months?
Look, it's the same as everyone. You just have to adapt and adjust. Now, the nature of politics is we're still largely operating, I won't say as normal, but we do come into Leinster House for all our sessions. We spend a lot of time in the convention centre for larger sessions of the Dáil for voting. But we managed, now that we've actually have a government, that was certainly the biggest issue for the start of the pandemic. Was we didn't have the usual parliamentary kind of tools available to us, but all that's back normal. But yeah, no, it's extremely difficult. We spend a lot of time on calls like this. WebEx and Teams is the one we use inside. WebEx is the one we use in a political context. But certainly, look, it's a challenge, but it's an opportunity. We're probably getting to speak to continental colleagues a lot more, because you don't all have to go to a meeting in Brussels to do it. You can do it from the comfort of your own office. But certainly, I never thought I'd miss London City Airport, but I'm kind of relishing the chance to get back to some semblance of normality whenever we can.
Yeah, I suppose I'll echo what you're saying in terms of, look, there has been some, I suppose, positives. Every cloud is a silver lining. It's not taking away anything in relation to the challenges that people and businesses are experiencing in 2020. But for example, we held our Innovation Week. Our Innovation Week generally would be a morning event, 3 to 4 hours, with between 300 and 400 people at it. We held an Innovation Week this week, and we'd international speakers. So we'd people speaking who were located in New York. We'd also attendees from Australia, China, New Zealand, Switzerland, and so on. So without technology, that wouldn't have happened. So we've had a greater reach as well. We've been able to bring people into the district that we wouldn't have been able to been previously. But that's one of the positives. But this morning you're going to give us an overview and an update on recent developments, what they may mean for Ireland, the best outcome, and what can businesses in Ireland do to prepare for Brexit.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I suppose I'll split my comments into three sections. And don't worry, it's not going to be 3 sections of an hour each. There's 3 kind of key areas to touch upon: the ongoing trade talks, the Joint Implementation Committee, and then, as you touched on, preparedness. So the trade talks is what gets the main kind of focus in the media and discussion, and that's obviously between Michel Barnier and David Frost. Now, it's not just about the 2 individuals; they have massive teams working on this in 9 different sectoral negotiations going on sequentially. So they've been ongoing and intensified over the last few weeks and months. And we're now at a stage, essentially, where there's 3 outstanding issues. The level playing field, which is making sure that goods being traded between the UK and the EU post-Brexit are of the same standard, that the UK can't do anything to undermine the single market or maintain a competitive edge. That's quite common if you're trying to do a trade deal with the EU. The second area is in relation to governance. So governance of that level playing field, how is it arbitrated? How is it ensured? Now, the European proposal is that it becomes a tool of the ECJ. However, obviously that's not too happy with the British side, but with less than 50 days to go, it's very unrealistic to expect to have a whole new governance structure created and stress tested by the 1st of January. And the third area, which is economically actually very small, but it's very easy to scope, is in relation to fisheries. This is politically very sensitive because within the UK, fisheries was a big reason for voting Brexit, and certain constituencies in Scotland and the northeast of England voted for Brexit and voted for the Conservatives based on the prospects of fisheries. The EU wants to maintain access to Britain's to the UK's fishing waters. A lot of people go like, well, why would they want that? And go like, well, the flip side is the UK wants to maintain access to the EU's energy market. So, there's a quid pro quo. At the moment, 70% of the value of British fish is sold to a European market anyway. And it's all about trying to maintain that balance. And there's elements of compromises there. So they're the three issues that Barnier and Frost and their teams have been teasing over. And we have a European Council meeting over the next couple of days. We'll get an update tomorrow from Michel Barnier to the European ambassadors. People are talking that there's a potential of a deal and a breakthrough on Tuesday. There is, but this is where it's going to come down to the economics of Brexit don't make sense. I'm sure many of you have heard me say that a million times. The economics of a no deal are absolutely catastrophic for everyone, but the country that suffers the most is the UK. So a political decision has to be made in the UK whether or not they want to take this deal. Now, on the background, obviously, that we have the economic onslaught of the global pandemic, and we see all the warnings from the Bank of England, from the CBI, and all the other bodies. But the people who are most opposed to COVID lockdowns, who are being politically difficult for Boris Johnson, are the same people who want the hardest Brexit, who are okay with a no deal. So really at this stage, there's a deal there to be done, but it's up to the British government whether or not they want to do it. And if I was up in Leopardstown now and we were looking at the race course, I would say at the moment a deal is the likelier option, but I wouldn't be putting the mortgage on it, and maybe a fiver each way. The second thing, second strand that it often gets caught up, but it is quite distinct, is the work of what's known as the Joint Implementation Committee. So this is the committee where the European side is headed up by Commissioner Maros Šefčovič and the British side by Michael Gove, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. And this is about the implementation of the withdrawal agreement. So really what this is about the implementation of is the Northern Irish Protocol. And that's making sure that places like Belfast Port, Warrenpoint, Belfast Airport are ready to carry out the necessary level of customs, veterinary, sanitary, phytosanitary inspections of goods coming and going between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. Because the agreement, which is international law and which is binding, says that Northern Ireland, regardless of any deal, maintains the rules of the European single market and applies the EU's customs code. That's slightly complicated by what's known as the Internal Market Bill that the British government launched about 2 months ago, which directly contradicts aspects of the withdrawal agreement in the 5th section of the Internal Market Bill. That's been amended by the House of Lords. It's been kicked back to the House of Commons. Elements of that can get resolved in the trade talks or become moot in the trade talks, but the Joint Implementation Committee, we have EU inspections in Northern Irish ports of entry actually this week. So look, that's just something that has to happen. It's not a negotiation, it's an implementation. Now, the third area coming closer to home, and I'll conclude on this and then open up to questions, Conor, is in relation to preparedness. And this is the great difficulty, because we can never be fully prepared for Brexit of any nature. A no-deal Brexit has framed the last 2 budgets in Ireland. And there is, regardless of deal or no deal, there are very major changes coming on the 1st of January that most Irish businesses, to their credit, thanks to the work of the likes of yourselves and other industry bodies and commercial entities, and particularly I think of our main Irish banks, have done huge work on this as well, are relatively prepared. And I'd certainly venture that we're better prepared than the UK. Of all the EU member states, we are, of course, the most exposed to Brexit. The Dutch and French are fairly well prepared. So there's a few things that have been done and still can be done or need to be done. So a lot of people would have heard last summer talking about EORI numbers, and that's for people who export and import to and from the UK. Now, at one stage last year, we only had 45% take up, but thanks to a campaign from Revenue, that's now up to 97%. The next phase of that is in relation to customs agents. So we have the government's employed customs officials and veterinary officials to deal with the change of situation in Dublin Port and Rosslare and places like that. But a lot of companies will need to engage the services of customs agents. This is a profession that was very widespread 20, 30 years ago, but became less and less relevant in recent years. You are able to, since the budget, get a grant from the government of up to €9,000 to engage a customs agent. There has been training for the last 2 years through TU Dublin and Sure Skills to get people able to do this. There's a whole suite of supports available, be it from the Brexit loan scheme, where if you're a company of less than 250 employees, you can borrow from 25,000 to €1.5 million. The Future Growth Loan Scheme is a long-term 7 to 10-year loan to support strategic investment. There's 800 million available there. There's a smaller grant, Enterprise Ireland run a Be Prepared grant of €5,000 to assist companies deal with Brexit. And also our LEOs, and I know the Dunleer Down LEO are on this call, they have online trading vouchers and assistance for micro exporters. Intertrade Ireland Start to Plan voucher is worth 2,250 to source advice for trading for Brexit. I've mentioned the customs grant, and then there's also a lot more funding contained in the budget. There's €100 million there to help business increase resilience and competitiveness. And on the kind of the larger, more macro scale within the budget, there's a €3.4 billion Brexit/COVID preparedness fund, because we would have drawn down the rainy day fund that a lot of people would have heard of, worth €1.5 billion at this stage. I said, look, we're less than 50 days to go to Brexit. I'm sure most people on this call have already got their businesses as prepared as they can, but I appreciate it's much different scenario if you're a small company working out of Sandyford and there might only be 4 or 5 of you in the office, and you don't have the scope to appoint a Brexit preparedness manager, considering that you're the combination of the managing director, head of finance, head of sales, chief cleaner when needs be. That's the sort of the kind of the agility that's needed. There's a couple of tools you can do. To go on to gov.ie/Brexit. You'll see the Enterprise Ireland kind of Brexit preparedness checklist, just to go through all those sort of things. And other than that, I think I see some questions coming through, but I'm happy to pass over to you, Conor, to MC those. And I've hopefully given a bit of an overview of where we are in that 20 minute engagement.
Neale Richmond TD, thank you for bringing us up to date. Yeah, there's a number of questions coming in. And just one of your last points, you mentioned, about the businesses in Sandyford Business District and, nationwide having plans. Over the last number of weeks and throughout 2020, we've been engaging with businesses. And one thing that we're finding is from businesses across a number of sectors in Sandyford Business District is while they themselves have their plan in place, they may have to import products from the UK. It's a blend of the UK and continental Europe. They're finding that their supplier in the UK does not have a contingency plan or a Brexit plan. And they're finding that extremely worrying, and they're also finding out that the companies in Sandyford that would export to the UK, they're also finding that scenario as well. Are some UK-based companies, are they putting their head in the sand, burying it in the sand? Is there an element of complacency? Because we're as you mentioned, there's a certain element that don't want a deal. There's others that do want a deal. What are you finding? What's the word on the ground in the UK in terms of businesses? Are they ready?
Frankly, no, they're not. And I'm not going to, and I'd be very careful with my tone, because some people would think that I'm trying to a horrible phrase to use, Brit bash, or put down something. But I'm just going to try and deal with the facts. There is complacency in the UK. There's an element of ignorance as well, and we see the level of preparedness simply isn't there. And we can see that from Nissan saying that they're going to close their plant in Sunderland and cost 7,000 jobs just this week. A lot of people, and perhaps in Ireland, in one way overestimate what a deal will mean. For sure, if we get a deal that makes sure that there's no tariffs or quotas, it will take there's a big difference in that. Then all of a sudden, all our beef exports going to the UK having a 40% tariff. That will be crushing for an already struggling industry. But certainly, look, we've seen it at a government level. Holyhead simply is nowhere near as prepared as Dublin Port is. Neither is Fishguard or Pembroke. Dover clearly isn't prepared. There will be huge things. So what one of the big focuses, and it's not always applicable, might be more applicable for certainly some of the manufacturing industries in Sandyford as opposed to kind of the agri-food industry, is we are encouraging where people can, like there is massive capacity to export direct to the continent. And it's not just your typical Dublin, Cherbourg, Roscoff routes. You can say there's sailings from Cork to Lisbon, Santander, Dublin and Rosslare to Roscoff, Cherbourg. There will be new ones going into Le Havre, then into Zeebrugge and Ostend, and there will be one in due course to Duisburg in Germany. So for anyone exporting to the continent, and bearing in mind that continental EU is where 48% of our exports go, looking at direct shipping that mightn't necessarily have been thought about before because of the time it took or the cost. Bear in mind that shipping through the UK will take considerably longer, at least for Q1 and Q2 of next year, due to the sheer lack of preparedness. You have the prospect of lorries coming up to Holyhead and having to wait 3 or 4 hours to get their paperwork through. This isn't Project Fear, it isn't scaremongering, it's frankness with the business community. And a lot of people have already made their preparations, a lot of people have already divested. In the kind of medium term, I think an Enterprise Ireland are doing a huge amount of work at this. It is looking at our diversity of export markets. The UK is dropping. I think it's now our fourth, if not fifth, largest export market, behind the USA, behind Belgium, France, Germany. It'll still be a very important market, and particularly for certain agri-food sectors. But there's the growth potential very much is in the continental markets first and foremost, but then using EU trade deals to export further afield. So Ireland is the second largest exporter of evaporated milk, so basically baby food, to China. You now have the prospect where Nestle are shipping baby formula from Rosslare to Ostend, and it gets on a train, and 15 days later, it ends up in China. That's the sort of supply chain agility that we're looking at now. But certainly, it is in the next few days and months and weeks that people are check your British suppliers, check your British clients, make sure that they're up to scratch, that they've done their due diligence, that they're going to be able to, because the last thing you want is, yes, of course, we'll keep the contract going, and then they'll be able to turn around and say, actually, we can't guarantee that in 2 to 3 days anymore. It's going to be 4 to 5. We saw the impact to supply chain exposures at the start of the pandemic. None of our shops, none of our chemists or anything like that ran out of bread or nappies or anything like that. That did happen to a large extent in the UK because our main providers and the people who supply and supply chain networks in it kind of switched from that sort of real-time supply chain to the 2 to 3, 4 day lag in preparedness for Brexit, and that really kind of stood to us. So it's certainly something to be aware of. It's something we only have limited control of, and it doesn't matter if you're 100% prepared. If your supplier isn't in the UK, that changes it regardless.
Yeah, that's good advice. Look, do your due diligence, ask the questions. If your supplier isn't prepared, have a plan B. There's a number of questions coming in. Look about delay to imports and exports and certain parts of the UK becoming truck parks. But I suppose you've dealt with that in terms of the additional sea crossing routes that will be open, that will hopefully deal with imports and exports. And yes, look, there's going to be hiccups along the way at the start. While there may be delays, we'll get on top of it. We're quite a resilient bunch, and we can work together with our European partners to sort the issues out. It's in everybody's interest. One question, you may not want to want to answer it, but it is and it's fine if you don't. Dominic Cummings leaving, is this good? A good news? Is good for a Brexit deal?
Dominic Cummings leaving 10 Downing Street is a good thing. Full stop, Fabrice.
Okay.
But certainly,
get off the fence, Neil. Get off the fence.
Yeah, no, but certainly for the prospects of a Brexit deal, it does remove a very strong political influence. Because let's be frank, a no deal is a disaster economically. Everyone knows that. No one denies that, bar the most Spartan of Brexiteers. But politically, it is extremely sellable. And we saw that in the general election in the UK. Get Brexit done. The Tories winning a wave of seats across Northern England, attacking the EU, saying, look, we wanted a deal. We were offered Canada, which they weren't. We were offered X, Y, or Z. The EU were unreasonable. It's the Germans at it again. They're sticking up on us. Let's blame them. No, Britain's going to be great. Look, it makes very easy political rhetoric. It is also very easy to hide the economic impact behind COVID-19. And that's clearly the strategy that someone like Dominic Cummings was pushing. However, the reality is, if you can't feed your country, bear in mind the UK only creates 80% of its food. If you can't import the medicines you need, that rhetoric doesn't matter. And there isn't a general election for another 3 or 4 years in the UK. So Cummins leaving is a good thing. It does make a deal more likely. But from a European point of view, it doesn't change anything. We still have to get the deal over the line.
Okay. Just conscious of your time, I just 2 more questions we'll take. Is there even a slim possibility of an extension after the 31st of December, say 2 or 3 months? And just in relation to borders, it seems to be there's a concentration on physical goods, being imported and exported. Will there be an impact on services such as IT services? And they're the last 2 questions, Neil.
Yeah, so I think it was Charles asked them. Charles plays a little bit different. Is it reasonable to expect with a 70% possibility a 3-month extension? No, it's not reasonable to expect. It's very unlikely there'll be an extension. The UK had the option to agree an extension in June or July. The EU were more than happy to agree an extension of 1 or 2 years, but they chose not to. In fact, they went one further and legislated to say that they couldn't extend because this is the great failure and inability to get Brexit done. And this came up a lot yesterday in the House of Commons, where Northern Irish businesses, the manufacturers, the Ulster Farmers Union, the retailers, all made it quite clear that the UK in general is not ready, but Northern Ireland is particularly exposed and not ready as well. And there is a need not for an extension period. And this is where you can say I'm muddying the waters, but that's what politicians do in these areas. There may be prospect, maybe, certainly not 70%, of an implementation period. However, I wouldn't put any certainty on that, and we need to get a deal in the next couple of days to allow for any consideration of that. And we're still a little bit away from getting a deal. And the second thing, in relation to IT services in general, it's not that it would go under the radar. Services aren't covered in negotiation. Services come after, particularly when it comes to financial sector. And what you have is a series of notices from the European Commission whereby post the transition period ending, there is, depending on the sector, it could be clearance, it could be cash flow, anything like that. They're all covered for either 9, 12 or 24 month periods, depending on the sector, and you can get all those on the European Commission Connor, I see another question that's come in from Neve, so I'll answer it while I'm on. While I'm
Yep.
still all in one go. Will Irish professional qualifications be recognised in Britain? That has not been agreed yet, Neve, to be quite frank. It should do. They should be, and that's fairly simple, but we need to get that written up. Will your consumer rights be affected if you purchase from the UK? Absolutely. And there's quite a few links about, because a lot of people are buying online now for their own personal reason, and there's links now on Department of Foreign Affairs and Department of Taoiseach's website, the European section, talking through how to recognise your rights, because our online consumer rights are all European rights, and when the UK leaves the EU, they're no longer signed up to it. So that's the same way with customs and duties and tariffs. If there's a no deal, you have absolutely zero consumer rights if you're purchasing from the UK. If there is a deal, there's an element of rights in terms of returns and guarantee of quality of products. But the whole thing about a level playing field, if you order, I don't know what it is, if you are trying to think of something quite basic, but if you order a mobile phone charger from the UK at the moment, you know that that mobile phone charger, if it has the CE mark here, as I can see the one beside me, that it's not going to blow up and that it's not going to go on fire. And the whole point of a level playing field is to make sure those CE standards stay there. But if they leave with no deal and there's no level playing field, then there's no guarantee that that mobile phone charger won't catch fire. I know that's a really base level to put it, but I think that's where we're at talks, and that's why we need to remember exactly why they're so important.
Okay, Neale Richmond TD, thank you for your time. Thank you for bringing us up to date on the latest Brexit developments, and thank you for asking answering questions. I wish you the very best of luck for the next 50 days. You probably need it, and into the future. And look, we're all hoping for a positive outcome. I'd also like to thank everybody for joining us this morning. You can stay up to date on everything Sandyford on sandyford.ie. A reminder that Santa has gone virtual this year, so you need to register before Sunday. I'd advise everybody to register today. Places are limited. Log on to Eventbrite SBD Santa. That'll get you the link. Just in relation to Spend in Sandyford campaign, again, we'd encourage everybody to spend in Sandyford, and a reminder that for every €10 that's spent in the district, it'll equate to €40 distributed around the locality. And in relation to commercial rates, we're hoping to have positive news sometime next week or the week after. We've been campaigning heavily to keep commercial rates at the current level, so there's no increase in 2021. So again, thank you to Neale Richmond TD, everybody for joining us, and stay safe. Thank you.